Right, so there's a user whose name I'll pronounce Aranano C, and he was complaining about one of my videos, the one where I use a metaphor of, a wave comes up to a boardwalk and it only knocks one plank off, and I'm likening that to the electron wave. Okay, but he didn't complain directly about that metaphor. He was just like, read this. He told me about these other people's theories and read a transcript of her videos and yours, and this stuff was pissing me off. It's like, just tell me what you think. I'm willing to watch a video again, but give me something to have in mind so I know what you're getting at. Don't just think you're going to send me off on some busy work like you're my professor. Just do this and we'll come to you, son. It's not happening, right? But then he finally came back and he said that was the issue, and how that wasn't... basically, it's a mistaken metaphor. Well, it is just a metaphor. In the ocean I'm invoking, it's all classical stuff, so obviously it's not quantum mechanics, it's a metaphor. Okay, but I think it's a good metaphor, but it is worth mentioning the parts where it's weird. These metaphors, the problem is there is no classical metaphor that fits perfectly quantum mechanics. I mean, when you adopt the metaphor, weird stuff happens. You know what I mean? You can adopt and that's the whole point. You can adopt a particle metaphor or a wave metaphor. They both work in certain periods, and then there's a weird part where it starts working like the other thing. You know, if you look at the whole picture, it's like, well, it's weird the whole time. We're not really explaining something at every... Fine. First of all, one part of that is purely a wave mechanical thing. It's to point out, people, that just because some phenomena makes one little speck of damage, it doesn't mean that's the only place the phenomena occurred, right? Right, a tsunami came to this island 2 years ago, and it flooded out the first floor of some hotels and ripped up the road in Kona. On our side, it just caused a little... It was like a really fast tide, basically. It was like, wow, a tide that was going up and down every 10 minutes or something for a long time. So on our side, if you didn't see the tide going up and down like that, you wouldn't have noticed anything. Plenty of places you wouldn't even have noticed anything. Like we only noticed that in our bay where the flow, plenty of places you wouldn't have noticed anything. But it was everywhere. Okay, so I just want to invoke that idea because we're dealing with something like that. We have evidence that there's a phenomena that's spread out in this in 3 dimensions, but like a 2-dimensional wavefront, and we get just one speck on the screen, and we have evidence of both of those. We see the one speck and we see the thing. Now, what's weird, so if my ocean wave coming up to the boardwalk in Atlantic City was an electron wave, okay, here's the weird thing. Obviously, a real ocean wave could come up, and it might break this board, it might break that board, and it has to do with the local physics, the shape of the local space, and the power of the wave, such as it may have been lensed by the shape of the slope under the water. I want to say the shoreline, but of course it's even more important, the shape of the land under the water coming up to the coast. Right, so that wave could knock off all the boards or just one, or... Okay, the weird thing is, as an electron wave, it can only knock off one board. It has enough energy to knock one board off. So it comes up to the whole thing and only one board gets knocked off. And what we're curious about is why this board versus that board. Or does it really knock off all the boards that it's strong enough to knock off and we just see the one? Okay, that's where it gets weird, right? And where the classical metaphor breaks down. But it's a hell of a lot better than this collapse idea, where there is no metaphor. It's just like it suddenly becomes a one thing. Why? Because it becomes one then. As soon as we have to think of it as one, it must have been one. Clear enough to me that everything stays as a wave, and the weird part is, well, why does this whole wave front come? If it only has energy to knock off one board, how is it that it's distributed? And is that a second dimension of energy? What is the energy? Is it potential energy that goes away and shoots over to the point where it knocks the board out? Or somehow is it a probability distribution? And if so, then when one probability strikes, how does it know over here, oh, the probability spent our energy over there, it can't happen here? That's the weird stuff. The idea of a wave that's only has enough energy to knock off one board and will is a fairly good metaphor, except for that it brings us to this issue of, well, if it's shaped all along the boardwalk and has enough energy in that whole shape to knock off a board, how does it end up here and not here if both were possible?